All right. Well, good morning. Ohayou gozaimasu. I don't know how to say it in Korean. How do you say good morning in Korean?
No, you don't say that though. That's like a Google Translator. That's like when you're going goodbye, right?
All right. Well, so yesterday we went over how to frame a debate and all the burdens for the different styles. Today we're going to go over a universal basic income, kind of what is involved in that, what is it, and we'll practice with some resolutions coming up with negative or opposition and government arguments. I'm still stuck in policy brain from last week, sorry. And then we'll have a practice round tonight using a universal basic income resolution. So let's start with, what questions from yesterday do you have? What did you go home or the hotel or room, whatever, and you didn't quite understand, or you were thinking about, you wanted more explanation on? So what questions do you have from what we talked about yesterday? It's all great.
Good question.
Everybody's perfect. We know everything. That's okay. Okay, well, let's start here. What are the 3 types of resolutions that we can have in Parley? What's one of them? Fact. And with fact, what is the judging criteria that we use usually? It's that really long word. Yep, say it louder, you're right. Preponderance of evidence. Yes. And remember, that is who has the most facts on their side to prove that something is true or false. Great. Okay, what is one of the other styles of resolutions we could have? Value. With value, what do we have to provide for the judge? There was 2 things that we have to provide for the judge. A criteria. So that was, how do we measure things? So things like utilitarianism or deontology, looking at our actions. And then there was one other thing, I'll give you a hint. It's the same thing as the type of the resolution. So it's this word again. What is this word? Value, right? What is it that we should all really hold really close and dear to us? What is really important? So remember, we said safety or money or equality could be one, the state of being equal with one another, anything like that. All right, and what is the last style? Policy. Now there's 2 words that give away a policy resolution, would or should, right? We see one of those 2 words, we know it's a policy resolution. This one, what was the judging criteria for it? There's 2 words for this one. Net benefit. Who has a better world? The government after it changes something, Or the opposition says that the affirmative would cause more problems, so we want to stay with the status quo. Now, there were a bunch of burdens, though, for policy. So what were the things we have to prove with a policy resolution? What was one of the things? I'll give you a hint. I'll write the first letters. Blame. Whose fault is it? Who's causing all the problems? Is it the government? Or yesterday when we were talking about the violent video games, we had that it was the companies that made them. It's their fault. Okay, what's the next thing? Harm. And what goes with harm? Significance. And I'm not going to spell that out. It's really long. Significance. So what is the exact bad things that are happening and how big of a problem are they? Then we have to provide a plan text, right? Two sentences that says exactly what we're going to do to solve the problem. And what's the last thing we talk about? Solvency. How does the plan text solve the problem? How do we make the problem either A, completely go away, or B, at least get less of a problem, be better for the world? With all three, you have to prove that you're right. So with facts, why do aliens exist? Lucas, you did this debate, right? Last week? You were the affirmative, right? So what were some of the reasons you said for why aliens existed?
The biggest one was the lack of scientific evidence that there isn't.
So we don't have any scientific evidence that says they don't exist. Right? So that means they probably exist somewhere. We just don't know where. There's too many places for us to look right now. We aren't smart enough. We don't have enough technology. Okay? What could be an argument for why aliens do not exist? If you had to say aliens are not real, what is something you could say? Everyone believes in aliens. Somebody try.
There hasn't been any evidence up to this point.
Yeah, it could be the exact same thing that Lucas said. There's no evidence. So obviously they're not real. Right? And we could debate about which side is correct. Now with your value and your criteria, you have to show examples why your side is correct. Why is safety important? Why is being able to make money important? Or vice versa, the opposite side, why is making money bad? Or why is only worrying about money bad? Or why could safety be bad? And then policy, like we did a whole bunch of yesterday, who has a better world? Do we want to change or do we want to stay the same? Which one do we want to do? Does this make sense? And then the one other thing we have to do for framing the debate, well, there's two other things, excuse me, is remember, you have to define all of your words. Who is this house? What does band mean? And finally, remember Dr. Zompetti, Dr. Joe talked about rhetorically framing, or sort of using our words to make our side more vivid, to make the reality we want to paint very obvious to our judge. What questions do you have about this? Are we all ready to talk about basic income? Yay, the economy. If you're like me, hated debating the economy. Okay. All right. So, there's a couple of different types of basic incomes. There's an unconditional basic income, which says no matter what, you get money at the same level. Doesn't matter if you're Trump or if you are little old me that lives on a really low salary. Because I'm a teacher, like every other teacher. Okay, everybody gets the same. Then there's called progressive universal income. So we have unconditional. We have progressive. What this means is that everybody does get some money. Okay? But the people that are making less money get more than the really rich CEOs. So it kind of helps to balance it out a little bit. Then, the one that's really weird, but it does exist, is called a work incentive. Basic income. This one is really what the Netherlands are trying out right now. They just started seeing if this is going to work. I don't really understand it, to be honest. I read a lot about it, but it exists. We're not really going to talk about it, though, because it really does not make sense in my head.
Here, here.
I'm sure in the Netherlands it makes sense, but, so, we're not going to talk about that one. All right. So, in this lecture, here's how it's going to go. Oh, hold on. Let me turn off. I have an app that makes my screen redder. So I was like, why does that look so funny?
Oh.
Shan, is it too much of a hassle? Can you go over like how work incentive works?
Here's the thing. I don't even know.
You know,
Yes.
I don't know either, but I can guess, but I don't know. But I think like both the second type and the third type, progressive and work incentive, aren't really the fundamental central concept of basic income. They're sort of modifications.
Yeah,
They're what we would call softer stances, right? Meaning if you take a hard stance, if you take a stance that sort of takes the motion to its full extent, right? Universal basic income, or just basic income. It's basic. It's like everybody gets it, doesn't matter what, right? So anything else you add to that, like, oh, except in this case, except in that case, right? It's a kind of modification. It's a softer stance.
Yeah, it changes
right?
it a little bit.
Yeah. So, just like yesterday's motion, like, youth service, you can say, okay, everybody, has to do some kind of government service. Or you can take a softer stance. You can say, oh, everybody except, disabled people. Or you can say, oh, like in my room, Ogik's team is like, oh, military service. Actually, they took a hard stance because they said everybody had to do it. But opposition was like, oh, no, not everybody should have to do it. Like, not women, not disabled people, right? So, just as a word of advice for parliamentary debate, where you, especially in British parliamentary, where you only have 15 minutes to prepare, not 30.
Yeah.
But even in Asian parliamentary, where you only have 30 minutes to prepare and nobody's a super expert, it's usually easier to just take a harder stance, not put too many extra conditions that make it confusing, that make everybody a little unsure.
Yep.
In policy debate,
Yeah, then you can
their whole point is to make it exact and complex and have all the exactly right conditions that you've researched in detail, right? It's a very different thing, I think. So basically then, to finally answer your question about what would then be a work incentive, it means everybody gets a basic income, but you have to do some kind of work to get it. So that means, like, if you don't already have a job or something like that, the state will, like, give you a job and make you work. I think that's, basically, like, some kind of, national service, essentially, like what we were debating yesterday.
In Parley, you need to remember the acronym KISS.
Yes.
Keep it simple, student. Okay? The simpler it is, the better it is. Usually. All right, so for this lecture, we're going to go over what is a basic income. We're going to look at it in relation to social welfare programs here in Japan. Then we're going to go over basic benefits and problems with it, and then how to use it in debates. Okay? So, what is a basic income? Well, this idea is not new. It seems new because it's just now in the news about everybody trying it out. But it actually dates back 2 centuries, where some countries in England and other places were talking about, would it be better to pay everybody a little bit, or is it better to make people work for their living? So it's been a debate that's been going on for forever. The basic definition of it is that it's a periodic, so, usually paid monthly, amount of money that's set, and everybody gets it without a means to test or work. So I don't have to do anything extra to qualify. That's where the work incentive one becomes a little weird, in that it changes that a little bit. So there's 5 characteristics to all basic incomes. These 5 things are always met. That it's periodic. It's not every day. It's not sometimes, very rarely would anyone say that we should give it out weekly. Pretty much everybody says, we'll give you a lump sum at the beginning of the month or the end of the month. You decide what you're going to do with it. We hope you use it to buy, pay for food in your house. But we can't control it. The other is that it comes usually in cash or in vouchers. Okay, so that it can't be, you can only use it here, and whatever here is. Just like in the States, I can get my paycheck direct deposited, so that money just goes straight to my bank account. I don't ever have to mess with the check, which is nice. You can do that usually with a basic income, is just have the government send the money to your bank. The next is that it's paid to every individual. Usually when you become an adult, whatever the adult age is for your country. So what that means is social welfare programs right now are often paid by the household, right? Basic income does not care if you have a husband or a wife or kids. It looks at you only. Then, universal, obviously, everybody. And finally, unconditional. You don't have to pass a test. You don't have to work, usually, to get it. Those are the 5 basic characteristics of all of them. Now, as we were talking about with progressive basic income, that looks at how much do you make versus how much does a CEO make, or someone else who's really rich, and tries to balance it out a little bit more so that you don't make much, you get paid more than someone who makes millions and millions of dollars. The work incentive one says if you don't work, we'll give you a job, we'll make you work, or there'll be conditions where you have to look for a job, right? In my home state of Kansas, you can only get, so if you lose your job and you have to go on unemployment, you have to prove to the state that you're looking for a new job. And if you don't prove, they stop giving you money. And they're just like, have fun, goodbye. Illinois does that too. So, but this doesn't care, right? Work incentive would care. All right. So, some countries that have started using a basic income. The Netherlands has just begun testing different basic income programs. There's about 5 or 6 cities. Don't ask me what their names are because I can't pronounce them. That are all doing different programs to see which one works better before they start voting on one that would become countrywide. You also have Finland is one of the first that has, as an entire country, started doing a basic income. And like it says, you get about 560 euros per person per month if you're in that age group. But that also means that all the other social welfare programs for those age groups no longer exist. So everything has been replaced. Now, for the older citizens, that have reached retirement age, they still have, they're in a different social welfare program bracket. But the working ages of 25 to 58, you can't get extra governmental insurance. You can't get extra, money for food. This is what you get, and then anything else, you better work for it. And then Canada, Switzerland, France, parts of Italy are all looking at and considering, should we do this? Their countries are currently debating it at their governmental level. What style they want to use, how much, when, all of that. So they haven't adopted one, but these are the countries that are currently looking at it. All right, so let's look at the status quo. We're going to specifically look at Japan just because we're here in Japan. And Japan's situation isn't much different than a lot of the countries. The United States is in a very similar spot. Korea, I haven't done a lot, but I've heard Korea is having some economic issues too. So this is pretty universal. It's just specific to Japan. So here in Japan, to receive any type of social welfare, the requirements to qualify are extremely strict. So not very many people can actually receive any type of social welfare. It was only about 23% of those people that would generally qualify in Japan in 2015 received any type of social welfare program. 23%. So it's a very low number. It's also considered not enough to be able to even rebuild any type of livelihood. Think back to the 2011 tsunami, right? A lot of those people that have been displaced or lost their jobs are still having a lot of trouble getting back up on their feet because unfortunately the social welfare program is not enough to help them. The United States is the same. We just had a huge dam in California break, and 18,000 people had to be evacuated. And a bunch of flooding happened. So, what are we going to do there? If you remember back, Hurricane Katrina, do you remember hearing about this? Huge hurricane. Lots of places in the States are still suffering from not having, just a home to live in still. So it's a big problem. So in Japan, less than 2 in 10 households receive the social welfare, despite the fact that they fall below the poverty line. So they don't even make the basic amount, can be considered poor. They're poorer than the poor. In 2015, the average household savings, this is what you had in your bank account, here in Japan was 13.9 million yen. But your average debt was 7.55 million yen. And savings in relation to yearly income was 184.6%, but your ratio to debt to yearly income was 106.5, meaning you were spending way more than you were making, just trying to survive. So this wasn't counting fun things. This was food, healthcare, and a home, basically. That's it, which is pretty typical in the US. So, 80% of a household's income in Japan came from the head of the household. So only one person made 80% of what you made for your home. So think about it. If we do a basic income, what would that do to that number of 80% of our income comes from just one person? If we provide everybody with an amount of money, what would happen to household income? For example, here in Japan. We give everybody money. How would that change who earns the money for the household? Or how distribution is changed? Okay, how about this? In Japan, who is considered the head of the household? The husband or the wife? The husband, right? They're the ones that go do the jobs. What do the women do? We stayed home, feed the kids, clean the house, do everything that I personally hate to do. Okay? So if suddenly you're a wife and you're earning money that is not dependent on your husband, what could that do? What do you, Lucas? Okay, feminism. Women could have a little more power, maybe. What else could happen?
Reduce domestic abuse.
Maybe domestic abuse could go down because, Lucas and I were married and Lucas started beating on me. I could be like, peace out, Lucas, I'm leaving. Lucas would never do that, by the way. I don't think he has a mean bone in his body. He doesn't even know how to be angry. At least I haven't seen it. Right? But I could leave. Okay? What about little kids? What could it do for little kids in homes? If suddenly mom and dad make money. Maybe we could spend more time with them, right? Like, dad could be home a little bit more, right? Or mom could, not have to be at home and work a part-time job where I only see her, crack of dawn and as I'm passing out to go to sleep. Exactly. So, disposable income was about 427,000 yen. But 315,000 of that was used just on living expenses. So does that leave you with much money to have, to maybe go to a movie as a family, to go to a park where it's maybe 1,000 yen to get into it, like over in Nokonoshima, the island very close to here? Could you really do that as a family? No. Because you don't have much money to go do anything other than survive. And then if you were a non-working elderly household, your disposable income was 180,000 yen, but look at how much you averaged to spend. Way more than you made. So, what are some of the benefits? We now know that there's a problem. We're not making enough money to live. So what could come of giving people money to be able to live? Well, quality of life could increase, right? The ability to enjoy culture. The ability to go and see an orchestra play. To see a play. To go to a park. Right? Just enjoy family time. All of this could increase because now my entire life is not, as an adult, is not wake up, work, eat, sleep, repeat. Right? I can take a little time off. Maybe work 30 hours instead of 50. Some authors argue that we could become more democratically participatory. Also, this is up on the Moodle, by the way, all of this. So you can read the citations a lot easier that way. But, so I cannot pronounce that individual's name. But they argue that if we have more downtime, I can now go and protest more. So in the States, I personally do not have time to go and participate in things like the Women's March that was against Trump. Or I don't have much time to go and do things for Black Lives Matter because I live in my office, which I don't mind, but it would be nice to be able to go do, some democratic things. And so that's what some people say could happen. As Lucas said, we could see women's rights increase. Women are no longer dependent on the man or their parents, if they're not married, to provide for them. They could get an apartment, feasibly get an apartment on their own and be okay. Also, there's the argument that the most vulnerable, so the disabled that can't work for whatever reason, someone who's injured, sick, someone who unfortunately, didn't get to go to very much schooling, so they can't get those really high technical jobs, would now not have to worry and would be able to survive much easier. So we would also give them a democratic voice, because now they could have, not be scared, well, if I speak up, could I maybe lose my benefits, right? If I live on the state, if the state takes care of me. So that now I could go and say, hey, rights for disabled veterans really need to be changed. But I don't have to worry that I lose my money because I'm out there protesting. All right. Some other stuff is the Japanese economy, or an economy in general, could be increased. So one of the things that economists say to make a country's economy stronger is people need to buy things. Literally, we just need people buying stuff. And that'll help our economy, right? Because I can trade more with other countries. When you're buying things, you're paying taxes to the state, right? Consumption taxes or sales taxes or whatever. And so the government can use that money then to decrease its debts in whatever it has. And it could hopefully become what's called a positive feedback loop, where as, I spend more, the government can hopefully give me more and continue on down. Also, the idea that you're unemployed is not a thing, right? I'm no longer unemployed ever, because I have an amount of money coming in. So, for example, my boyfriend was unemployed for over a year. He could not find a job. We lived on my income as a teacher, and his income as a professional viola player, which, trust me, is not a lot of money. Sounds really cool. He plays concerts. He's traveled the world playing. Doesn't make much money, unfortunately, doing it, right? But if he made a basic income, we could live off of just him playing music and me teaching, and it would be okay. And then the other one is that we could actually encourage innovation. right? That people might start trying to make new things. Maybe we could get teleportation and my trip to Japan would not need to take 23 hours, which would be awesome. But right now, people don't do a lot of innovation, right? Because what if it fails? What if I put these millions of dollars into this and then it fails and I get nothing back? Right? That's a huge risk that you take. Well, with the basic income, it's a little safer. So we could make new things. There are some experiments that were run in Namibia and India, and they saw that entrepreneurs, right, or small business owners or innovators tripled. The number of people doing new things tripled just because they gave basic income to them. Imagine if that was in multiple countries. We have people making new things. All right, well, this all sounds great, right? Rhetorically, we have framed basic income as awesome. We are helping everybody. Well, let's look at the other side of this. There's some problems. The first is there are a lot of economists that fear that it would actually harm the economy. Think about it. How much money would the government have to give out to provide a basic income to everyone? That's a lot of money. Where's that money going to come from? Japan's considered the second poorest country, behind the United States. Where is that money coming from for either of those countries? What about a developing world that their economy is still really not very good at all? Where are they going to get the money? So we would see that there could be actually taxes could so drastically increase that basic income is nullified, or I might as well not get it because I'm having to pay so much money back that it's basically a net nothing increase. Some people and economists are worried that, suddenly, Johnny and Susie are getting paid to do nothing. So obviously they're going to stop working. They're just going to go live at home eating pie and watching television and playing video games. That's it. I mean, how many of you, just because you get a basic income, would just be like, I'm not doing any job. Goodbye. I'm living on 560 euros a month and that's it. I can do it. See, no, I want a nicer apartment. I want to go to the movies. I want to go watch plays, right? I would still work, but there is the fear that some people would leave their jobs. Which then, think about it, when you make an income, right, you pay taxes. And so suddenly so many people are not working. What happens to our taxes or the tax money? Well, it goes down. Well, then what do they have to do? They have to raise taxes in other places on everybody, right? So the question becomes, will it actually help the economy or not? The next is the governmental funds. A lot of basic income programs say, well, now that we're giving you this amount of money, social welfare programs, we're not going to do those anymore. So instead of having 4 or 5 different programs, we're just going to have one. Well, why could that be a problem? Why could going from having programs for food assistance, programs for health assistance, program for rent assistance, just down to here's your money, goodbye, leave us alone until next month when we send you another paycheck. Why could that be problematic? What do you think? Well, does everybody have the same health needs? No, some people have more health needs than others, right? So if suddenly their health program is just cut and out the window, what are they going to do if they need, let's say their prescriptions are $1,000 a month or 100,000 yen a month or, whatever it is. Well, the other thing is that could really harm the government, because participating in healthcare and all of that also provides money to the government, right? So if suddenly we're decreasing all of that participation, the amount of money we have in our governmental bank is much, much lower. So now what are we going to do if we have a huge natural disaster? If there's another earthquake somewhere, if there's another, really large typhoon that comes through, what are we going to do? Because we don't have the extra money laying around to help us. We just say, well, here's your 560 euro. Good luck. Bye. Some more economic issues, specifically for women, is that there's the fear that instead of women being encouraged to go get a job, right, and to participate a lot in society or increase what they do, they're just going to stay at home more. My mom, for example, always said she wished she could have been a stay-at-home mom. She would have loved to be able to just stay at home and take care of my little sister and I. How many other women would be like that? And women, just like men provide a unique outlook on society and problem solving, women provide unique outlooks on problem solving. If we would lose either group from basic society, what would our problem solving turn into? The other thing, especially for women, is called flexible jobs. So these are jobs that are not a set number of hours. They're not salary jobs. They're not a guaranteed. It's like working at a diner or a restaurant. In the States, a waitress gets paid about $2-3 an hour and then works off of tips. So you hope that your customers are nice. Sometimes, you get high school kids that are dumb and don't tip. So you just did all this work for $3. We might have an increase in those types of jobs. So does that really help with the economy? Does that really help with women's independence? Or does that harm them farther? What does that also do for the most vulnerable that already have a hard time getting a job? Is it going to become even harder for them to get a job or a decent job? So then we also have the problems of poverty. Is the only issue for poverty whether or not I make money? Is that the only issue? So if we pay everybody the same amount, poverty goes away? Is that how it works? Probably not, right? Poverty exists for a number of reasons. Depending on the country, it could be, how do I view migrant workers? Right? In the United States, we have large migrant populations that help us with harvest. So when it's time to, get all the fruit and the food, not just fruit, the crops, right? But we don't pay them a lot. Well, would a basic income solve all of their poverty issues? No. They're still going to get paid not much, And that, big farm corporation is going to make a lot of money off of selling all their apples. Right? Or their carrots. I'm not talking about like the little farmer guys that have like 3 fields. I'm talking the people that own, millions of acres. Okay, well, what about, the gender division in labor? Women make less than men on average around the world. So would just giving all women money really solve the issues of poverty? No, we're still going to probably be making less than our male counterparts. And so could we really live on our own, or would the cost of living maybe increase and force women still to rely on their parents or a husband? Right? It sounds like a great idea, doesn't it? Right? We're going through those first couple of slides and it's like, yeah, why are we not doing this? What is wrong? Then if you start thinking about it though, well, is it the best idea? Well, welcome to debate. This is what our job is, right? As debaters, we have to think about these hard questions. Is it a good idea or not? And if it's not a good idea, why? If it is a good idea, why? And then the next question is, how do we convince others? Right? So, there's a couple more problems. Sounds like we're over, we're not. So, there's issues of welfare states where people become dependent on the government completely. Where rather than just having the government be there for in case something terrible happens, I just live on the government. And then, because I'm living on the government, I don't want to change or ask for something to change, right? I want things to stay the same, because if things change, I could maybe lose my money. So I don't participate in democracy. I just zip my lip and take my check. And that's it. So that also can further harm the economy, like we were talking about, because we have less people paying into income tax. Also, there's an argument that in a welfare state, there's more stratification between classes. So, the rich think they're even better now than the poor. That the difference between how much, is considered to be the level of poverty versus how much is the wealthy, that gap widens even more now. Because now as, a big job or a big corporation owner, because everyone's getting basic income, I can reduce my wages to my workers because they don't really need that money to live anymore, which means my profits go up, which means I make even more money, right? And then the lines between who is unemployed, who is just lazy, and who is, really looking for a job and just not being able to find it, right? We can't really tell anymore. So now how do we start to view people? And how do we place them in groups? And then there's political issues for women. So, will women really participate in democracy? Here in Japan, there's a female governor of Tokyo now. There's the Democratic Party, I believe, has a female leader for the first or second time. There's a woman working in the with the prime minister. Does anyone remember what job she has? We talked about it last week. I can't remember. But she's like in his cabinet with Abe. She's very important. I can't remember her exact job at the moment. Right? So women are really pushing. We had a woman run for president in the United States. We had Merkel in Germany is the prime minister, right? Well, what happens if we start giving them basic income? Do they have as much motivation to politically demand new things? Or am I just happy now? Or are all my problems fixed, so I'm good? Just gonna hang out, eat bonbons. I wouldn't. Bonbons aren't good. And there's also the argument that there could be more subtle discrimination. So paying women less becomes much more okay because they're doing less work. Right? So it's not as obvious what we're doing as a society. So, preparing for debates. This is where we're going to do some group work where you're sitting, you'll talk with people. So, if we have this house would institute a universal basic income, if that's our motion, there's some key questions we need to think about. What is a universal basic income? Okay, are we doing progressive? Are we doing flat? What are we doing? Then we need to decide who's going to be the most affected. Who do we need to talk about the most? How are we going to institute it? Are we going to end other social welfare programs? Are we combining it with social welfare programs? Right? If you're the opposition, why should we reject universal basic income? What are the strongest reasons? And, should there be a work requirement? Or should I be able to just hang out and be good? So, is that where it ends? Come on. Why is there an E in the middle of that? I have no idea. Yeah, instead of a 3, I have an E. Oof. I mean, I guess on the English.
1, 2, E.
Yeah. All right, so.
I think there's a second set of questions too, actually.
Well, yeah, these are just the basic questions for now.
Uh-huh.
So it says choose. You're not going to choose. You're going to prepare the op and the government side with your group. Not super big. Don't think like I have to do 7 minutes of speeches. I'm just saying your basic arguments, right? And answer these questions. The context of the motion, the goals, the principles, whether you're op or gov, and the practical implications, right? So work don't work by yourself. Talk to people around you. Kind of come up with an idea. Now we're going to get more into it with some other different resolutions here in a little bit. So this is just the super basic level. Okay? Let's take about 15 minutes to work. So it is. Yeah, so it's about 10 o'clock. So take 15 minutes with your group. Come up with your best government stuff and your best negative opposition stuff, okay? And then we'll talk about it. So talk amongst thyselves.
It's hard to do in about 15 minutes.